She approved those expenses without clearance. Alan's voice cut through the conference room like a knife. Papers rustled as heads turned toward me. My chest tightened. He slid a stack of receipts across the table like a prosecutor showing evidence. I froze. Those expenses weren't mine. They were his, filed under my login while I was away on vacation. I'm 30 years old, brunette hair pinned back in a simple clip, wearing a gray blazer that suddenly felt 2 sizes too heavy. Marlene, our CEO, fixed her eyes on me. "Emma, is this true?" The heat in my cheeks made it hard to breathe. I shook my head, but no words came out. Alan leaned back in his chair, smirk tugging at his mouth, waiting for my silence to seal the verdict. The room whispered around me, my reputation already slipping away. But what Alan didn't know, I had kept the audit trail, and I wasn't afraid to use it. By the afternoon, IT arrived at my desk. They didn't ask questions, they just took my laptop. My coworkers pretended not to stare, but I felt every eye on me. Alan walked by slowly, sipping his coffee, that same smug smile plastered across his face. I was sent home pending investigation, no chance to explain myself. Packing my desk felt like packing my dignity into a cardboard box. I walked out through the lobby, cheeks burning, security guards shadowing me as though I were a thief. That night, I powered up my personal hard drive. I had saved backups of everything. Each approval, each expense log left behind a digital fingerprint. The receipts Alan claimed were mine, the system showed they had been filed from his device. At times, I wasn't even in the country. He thought he buried me, but he had no idea that I had already started building the case that could bury him. The next morning, I wasn't allowed inside the office. My badge beeped red. Through the glass, I saw Alan standing near Marlene's door, talking with her in low tones, dressed in a new navy suit. He wanted my role. My stomach churned as I watched him slide closer to my seat. I turned away before the guard could notice me lingering. Back home, I pulled up the audit logs. Every keystroke, every login, every approval was traceable. Alan hadn't just used my account. He left behind his location stamps and IP addresses. It was all there, proof he couldn't erase. But I knew if I showed Marlene too soon, she might side with him anyway. Alan had already poisoned the room against me. If I wanted revenge, I had to let him step deeper into his own trap. And I was ready to wait. Alan grew bolder with every passing day. I could tell from the company emails forwarded to me by the one friend who still believed me. He was presenting more projects, taking on responsibilities that had been mine. His confidence dripped from every word. Meanwhile, I documented everything, each stolen file, each altered approval. I started building a timeline that told the truth. Every fraudulent charge tied directly to his system. I didn't sleep much. My hair stayed in a messy bun, my clothes wrinkled, my kitchen counter covered in notes. But my rage kept me awake. Every humiliation replayed in my head, fueling me to keep digging. The more I looked, the worse it got. Alan hadn't just stolen credit. He was siphoning money through vendors tied to his cousin. It was fraud on a scale that could destroy him. He thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. Marlene called me in for a formal HR meeting. I walked into the room with my heart hammering, clutching a folder full of evidence I wasn't ready to reveal. "Emma," she said, her tone flat, "we're still reviewing your case, but I'll be honest, things don't look good." Alan sat at the table, fake sympathy painted across his face. "It's nothing personal," he said, his voice dripping with false kindness. "We just have to protect the company." I bit down hard to stop myself from lashing out. Not yet. If I played my hand too soon, he'd find a way to slither out. So I nodded, swallowed the humiliation, and walked out quietly. Outside the glass room, I caught Alan's smirk. He thought he'd won. But all I could think was, the deeper he smiled now, the harder he'd fall when the truth came out. I stayed silent for the next week, even as rumors swirled. Alan enjoyed every second, strutting through the office as though he already wore my title. I gathered more evidence, creating a clean report with every transaction, every log, every IP address. Each page was another nail in his coffin. But I wanted more than just clearing my name. I wanted him ruined, his mask ripped away in front of the same people who watched me fall. So I waited. The quarterly board meeting was coming up, the one where Alan would have to present financials. That was my chance. He would walk in confident, standing tall with the spotlight on him, and that was when I would strike. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. My apartment was lit only by my laptop's glow as I polished the report. My heart raced as I imagined the moment. The boardroom full, Alan striding to the front, and me stepping in with the truth. My hands trembled as I rehearsed what I'd say. My reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger. Eyes tired but burning, hair pulled loose from its clip, determination etched into every line of my face. They thought I was finished. Tomorrow, they'd see who I really was. The boardroom buzzed the next morning. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need an invitation. I walked in with my folder clutched tight, ignoring the startled glances. Alan was already at the front, smiling wide as he began his presentation. "We've tightened expenses and driven growth," he boasted, gesturing toward slides filled with stolen numbers. My chest pounded. I waited until he reached the section on operations, my section. That's when I rose from the back. "That's a lie," I said, loud enough to silence the room. Every head turned. Alan froze mid-sentence, the color draining from his face. I placed my folder on the table. Here's the truth. Gasps filled the room as I laid out my evidence. Page by page, I showed the audit logs, the timestamps, the location data. Alan tried to laugh it off, calling me bitter, desperate, even unstable. But the board members leaned in, their eyes scanning the documents, their brows furrowing. "These records, they show your credentials," one director said, voice sharp. Alan stammered, his charm slipping. My pulse raced, but I didn't stop. I flipped to the vendor section, exposing the payments tied directly to his cousin's company. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Marlene spoke. Her face was pale. "Alan, is this true?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. His downfall had begun. Alan's mask cracked. He stuttered, trying to blame me, to claim I had doctored the files. But the IT director, sitting in the corner, shook his head. "These logs can't be faked," he said firmly. Alan's voice faltered. His confidence evaporated in front of everyone. My heart thundered as I watched him collapse under the weight of his own lies. Marlene's eyes darted between us. For the first time, she looked at me not as a suspect, but as someone who had been wronged. The board members whispered urgently among themselves. Alan's career, his reputation, his carefully crafted image, it was all crumbling in real time, and I wasn't finished yet. I turned one final page. "This isn't just about me," I said, my voice steady now. "It's about the company. Hundreds of thousands siphoned away through fake vendors, all under Alan's watch." The room erupted in shock. Alan's face drained of blood, sweat beading on his forehead. Marlene slammed her hand on the table. "Enough! Security!" 2 guards entered. Alan panicked, grabbing at the papers, shouting that it was a setup. But the directors had seen enough. The guards pulled him away, his protests echoing through the hall. I stood frozen, my hands shaking, adrenaline coursing through me. For weeks, I had been the villain. Now Alan was being dragged out like a criminal. And yet, I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. After the meeting, Marlene called me into her office. She apologized, formally, stiffly, saying they would clear my name. But I wanted more than an apology. I wanted accountability. I wanted them to know how easily they believed a lie, how quickly they erased me. I looked her in the eye and said, "You let him destroy me without asking for proof. You didn't just fail me, you failed this company." She shifted uncomfortably, but didn't argue. For the first time, she had no power over me. I wasn't just cleared, I was the one holding the truth in my hands. Word spread fast. By the next morning, everyone knew Alan had been escorted out. His office stood empty, his name wiped from the system. People whispered as I walked through the lobby, but this time it was different. Heads nodded, eyes softened, colleagues stepped aside. I wasn't invisible anymore. But I didn't smile. I carried myself straight, calm, untouchable. Revenge wasn't just about watching Alan fall. It was about reclaiming my place and making sure no one ever mistook my silence for weakness again. A week later, HR offered me a promotion. The role Alan had been chasing was suddenly mine. I accepted, not out of gratitude, but as a final strike against the betrayal I had endured. Sitting at my new desk, I opened the same systems Alan once exploited. I tightened controls, closed loopholes, and locked down every vendor. His schemes wouldn't just be exposed, they'd be erased forever. I leaned back in my chair, brushing a strand of hair from my face, and smiled for the first time in weeks. Alan was gone, his career in ruins, and I was stronger than ever. But the best moment came 3 months later. A news article broke. Alan had been barred from holding a financial role again, blacklisted across the industry. His name was mud, his reputation destroyed. I read the headline at my desk, the morning light streaming across my papers. My heart was steady. He had tried to erase me, to bury me under lies. Instead, I erased him. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. And as I looked around the office, colleagues nodding with respect, I knew one thing for certain: I would never be silenced again.